Today we are reviewing another book by Patrick Bet David, Your Next Five Moves, Master the Art of Business Strategy. I was really excited to dive into this book because if you follow Patrick Bet David at all, I mean, you know he's a successful businessman. You know that he's a forward thinker. He's a very curious person. He likes to ask questions. He likes to learn. What's really interesting to me about his life, about how he structures his life, he's such a forward thinker. He sort of divides his life into runs. He divides his life into 20-year increments almost. So maybe if he lives 80 years, here's the first 20 years of your life, here's the second 20 years. From 20 to 40 years of age, he, for instance, built a huge insurance business, sold it for hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, between 40 and probably 60, he's going on another run where he is trying to master the entertainment world, the social media world. After that, I don't know what his plans are, but the point is he's a forward thinker. He's a master strategist. He's a guy who's very successful. He thinks ahead. That's really what the entire book is about, your next five moves. I was also attracted to the outside cover of the book. You know, he has the symbols of a couple of chess pieces on the board, and he looks at life like chess. And that's something that, I was attracted to myself as a young man. I used to play chess all the time. Always enjoyed the looking across the room at an opponent and kind of anticipating what is his moves. How can I think 4 or 5 moves ahead of myself? So I could, if he does one thing, what would be the counter moves that I would do in order to be the winner of the game? And there's definitely a lot of parallels between chess and business. When I started reading the book, it became apparent that the book was meant for guys like me. In fact, it's really geared towards, I would think, maybe first time entrepreneurs, people who've just getting started. He's kind of guiding you through from his experiences what to expect. What do you need to start thinking about in the future? How do you think 3, 4, 5, 6 years ahead, 10 years ahead? Where do you want to be at the end? And he starts you out at the beginning. The book is for beginners, but it's probably also for seasoned investors as well, seasoned entrepreneurs. You can constantly learn from it. In fact, if you were actually reading through that book, there's 5 basic moves that he wants you to focus on. And I'm trying to master maybe the third move right now. He actually takes you to the point in the book where you're the best in your field in the world. He starts you at the very beginning, and then he kind of guides you through your thinking to be the best at the business that you're in. That kind of brings you to the point. He divides the book up into 5 moves. What are your next 5 moves? And the first move that he wants you to master, or he wants to talk about, is kind of basic. He calls it Master Knowing Yourself. That is the title of the first chapter. And again, that seems like, what does that mean, mastering knowing yourself? Well, he says that's very important, and it truly is. I mean, you really got to study the most important person, which is you. I mean, you got to know what makes you tick, what motivates you, what gets you excited, what gets you waking up every day to conquer the world. Because bottom line, if you're not motivated and you're not excited, entrepreneurship is very, very difficult. I mean, he'll tell you, any entrepreneur that's done anything in business will tell you it's difficult. You're going to have some downtimes. I mean, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're going to be working 12, 14, 15-hour days, 7 days a week. So what his point is, if you're not in alignment, if you're not aligned with your company's not aligned with your goals, with who you are, then the chances of success are going to be very difficult. You got to be motivated. You got to know what makes you tick. You got to be happy with what you're doing, because if you're not, it's not, you wouldn't go through that much pain. The pain and suffering of doing your business and doing a business you don't love and you're not passionate about will just eat you alive. So at the beginning, you really got to know and spend some time with your most important person, yourself, really figuring out what makes you tick. And what he does in this chapter is he really just asks a lot of series of questions. He asks a lot of thought-provoking questions that kind of gets out of you who you are. It makes you think, and that's very important. Spend some time doing that because entrepreneurship is a lifelong journey. Without knowing that, you're starting off on the wrong foot. So I thought that was a very important first move. And then he builds from there. It starts getting a little bit more complicated from there. So he actually starts with the second chapter. And the second chapter is called The Ability to Reason. What he's really starting to focus on is how to process information, actually. Because when you first starting your business, you're getting hit with so many different things. You're getting hit with every it seems like every 10 minutes you got a new problem you got to solve because you don't have your structure in place. And really he's telling you how to process information, evaluate information, and make decisions, almost creating standard operating procedures because every business needs standard operating procedures. You're first started, you don't have that book, you don't have that guidebook. You're creating that guidebook. You're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And really what he does is he guides you through again a process of kind of self-discovery. He kind of helps you anticipate a lot of the problems that you're going to be seeing and gives you certain strategies on how to look at problems in your business, how to reevaluate them, how to come up with solutions, and then how to implement them in your business for the long term. So I would say that was also a very important chapter. Then he goes on to the third move. He keeps kind of going up. And the next move, he calls it Mastering Building the Right Team. This chapter is critical for all businesses, obviously. You can't do it on your own. If you're going to scale and grow your business, you got to have a team. And for me, I still struggle with this day. I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. I do have a team. It's constantly being developed. But I remember at the beginning, growing a team was almost impossible because I didn't have any capital. I was a one-man band doing everything. And when I hired somebody, my payroll increased. They weren't ready to produce and pay back the dividends that I needed. So it was almost like you had to take one step back and take two steps forward. And at the beginning, I struggled with taking a step back at all because I needed the money. But as you grow your business, you get to a point where you have no choice. It's either grow or die. And so I went through that process. And the book really kind of talks about, well, how do you hire a team? What do you look for in the people that you hire? You're really building a principle-based business. And he really walks you through how do you build a principle-based business where your objectives are portrayed to your new hires, your team members. How do you get them motivated? How do you keep them? How do you retain people? How do you keep them excited? For you to attract the best and the brightest, you have to offer them something that maybe your competition doesn't have because they can come into your world, learn, and then go somewhere else. How do you keep them engaged? How do you not only build your team? How do you hire your team? How do you maintain your team? How do you build a culture? And he really gets into a lot of detail on that. It's a lot easier said than done. Some people might have a knack for it, but for me, it's been a skill set that's taken a lot of years. So if you're a person who is learning to grow your business or wants to take it to that next level, this is a very important move that you need to start thinking about now. And then he keeps building up his business from there. He first talks about, in the first chapter, know yourself, learn how to process information, set up standard operating procedures, how to build a team. And then on the fourth chapter, the fourth move, it's now he gets into, he calls it master the strategy of scaling. In this chapter, this is the chapter that I couldn't even relate to the most because I'm not there yet. My business hasn't scaled sufficiently, but he's assuming that your business is already scaled. And okay, everything is, you got momentum. Well, now you need a target. And he calls it going after your Goliath. As your business is scaling, you need kind of a goal, an end goal. Who is the leader in your business? Who are you going to overtake? And he kind of relates to how, Nike was a smaller shoe company than Converse. How did Nike overcome Converse? How did Walmart overcome Kmart? And he really talks about like when you're going up against these Goliaths, these titans of business, you're at a disadvantage They got all the money, they got the legal teams, they got the resources. And most of the time, when you're going up against these monster companies, you have no chance. And so he really kind of talks about, well, what's that mindset that you have to have? Like, what do you got to do to overcome these guys? It's possible. He did that in the insurance business and was very successful. So what he chose to do, what he really talks about is leverage. I mean, you got to master the art of leverage. How do you use leverage to overcome your competition? And he has a whole chapter. If you ever watched his YouTube channels, he loves interviewing mobsters, mob bosses, and stuff like that. And he has a whole chapter about this in this section of the book, because mobsters, and they're really good at mastering leverage in order to overcome competition. And he kind of puts you in that mindset, kind of almost like think like a thief in order to beat your competition. So it was a very interesting chapter, a good way to kind of conclude the book, where you start off with the whole book thinking about yourself. How do you align your business goals with your final objective? And he already takes you to the place of building a team, scaling, and then actually overcoming and beating the best and the best in your business. This final chapter is probably one that I couldn't really relate to, because he takes you to that next level. He assumes that, okay, your business is scaling, your business is growing. I'm at that phase now personally. I'm just still building teams. There's other businesses I'm involved in personally that we're at that point where we're scaling, but I really haven't been through that process. So this chapter is probably for that entrepreneur who's looking at going to the next level. But there's some really good components to this chapter, whether you're a beginner or you're a seasoned investor. So it really says, if you're scaling, what you really need to focus on next is, who's your target? Who's the competitor? Who's the main competitor on your block that you want to overcome? He calls it the Goliath of your business. And he starts talking about the story of how Nike overcame Converse. Converse was the main shoe company in the United States and the world. How did Kmart get overtaken by Walmart? Walmart was a lot smaller than Kmart at one point. Kmart was the Goliath. How did they overcome them? And he says, for every one of those success stories where a company overcame a Goliath in their business, and it's possible to do it, most of the time it doesn't work. You're fighting an uphill battle. The Goliaths, the titans of the industry, they got all the money, they got all the resources. They can see you coming a mile away, and they can outfund you and squish you. So what do you do? And this is where you can kind of learn, no matter what phase of business that you're in. He really starts talking about leverage. Leverage is very important no matter what aspect of business you're in. Even if you're a beginner, you need to learn how to leverage your resources. And he has a whole chapter on how do you think in terms of leverage, and he uses mobsters as an example. If you ever watch his YouTube channel on Valuetainment, he loves to interview mob bosses, people who have been into the mafia. And how do they think? How do they sit there and use leverage in order to expand their crooked business? Well, you can use those, you can learn a lot from mobsters. And he really believes that. And he actually takes you into that mindset of thinking. How do you use leverage to overcome larger opponents? So it was more of an entertaining chapter for me, something I can't quite relate to because I'm a small businessman just trying to grow my business. But there was a lot of little takeaways from that chapter as well. So I definitely wouldn't gloss over it. And it really just kind of ends the book basically saying that entrepreneurs are problem solvers. The world needs entrepreneurs. And you can tell he is very passionate about this, and he really wants to help people like myself, and he wants to inspire people to be entrepreneurs, to be successful, because the world needs us. So if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a person who really wants more out of life, you want to learn about business, this is a great book to get you thinking in that direction. So if you're an entrepreneur, somebody who wants to learn about business and potentially growing your own business, definitely go out and get Your Next 5 Moves by Patrick Bet-David. It's a fantastic book. I recommend it for anybody. If you can, like, subscribe. If you have any comments, please say them down below. I'd love to answer them.